Imagine a man who could make children laugh at birthday parties, shake hands with politicians, and organize charity events. Yet beneath that smiling clown costume hid one of the most terrifying killers in American history. John Wayne Gacy, later known as the Killer Clown, managed to live a double life so convincing that even those closest to him could not see the darkness lurking just below the surface. By the end of this story, you'll understand how a man in grease paint and oversized shoes left behind one of the most disturbing legacies in true crime history. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the darkest chapters of human history. Now, let's go back to the beginning. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second of 3 children in a working-class family. His father, John Stanley Gacy, was a World War I veteran and an alcoholic who ruled the household with aggression. Gacy's mother, Marion, was described as kind and protective, but her presence was often overshadowed by her husband's temper. From an early age, Gacy lived in fear of his father's constant criticism and physical abuse. Despite the trauma, he sought his father's approval, a desire that would haunt him for years. Health problems further complicated his childhood. Gacy suffered from a congenital heart condition and was hospitalized frequently. This prevented him from engaging in sports and other activities where boys his age found acceptance. His health issues, combined with an abusive home environment, made him an outsider. Classmates often teased him, and teachers noted his attempts to fit in despite clear emotional struggles. As a teenager, Gacy's desire to escape his father's wrath grew stronger. He tried to live up to societal expectations, taking small jobs and eventually enrolling in business courses. Still, conflict at home reached a breaking point, and in his early 20s, Gacy left Chicago for Las Vegas. There, he briefly worked in the mortuary business, a job that reportedly gave him his first close encounter with death. Though accounts differ, it was here he may have begun exploring morbid curiosities that would echo later in his crimes. Returning to Illinois, Gacy attempted to rebuild his life. He married Marlon Myers in 1964 and appeared to settle into the role of a husband and father. He also began managing Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises owned by his wife's family, a position that brought him a measure of local respect. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, troubling behavior was already emerging, behavior that hinted at the darkness to come. By the late 1960s, Gacy's life would take a sharp turn, leading him into a spiral of criminal activity and violence. What began as hidden impulses would soon evolve into acts that shocked the nation and redefined the very meaning of a double life. By the late 1960s, cracks in John Wayne Gacy's carefully built image began to show. In 1968, he was convicted in Iowa for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. He served 18 months of a 10-year sentence before being released on parole in 1974, good behavior. By then, his wife had divorced him, and his reputation was tarnished. Yet astonishingly, Gacy managed to rebuild his life once again, moving back to Chicago and starting over as if nothing had happened. This second life was where his deception reached its peak. On the surface, Gacy was the picture of community involvement. He started a successful construction business, PDM Contractors, which gave him both financial stability and influence. He became active in local politics, even posing for photographs with prominent Democrats of the time, including First Lady Rosalynn Carter. He hosted block parties, volunteered for charities, and, most famously, created his clown persona, Pogo. Dressed in red, white, and blue grease paint, Gacy entertained children at hospitals and neighborhood events. For many, he was the cheerful face of civic duty. But when the makeup came off, a far darker reality was unfolding. Gacy lured young men and teenage boys, often under the pretense of offering them construction work or a friendly place to hang out. Once inside his home, his victims were subjected to unspeakable violence. Gacy's preferred method of control was a cruel trick he called the handcuff game. He would show his victims a pair of police handcuffs, pretending it was all in good fun, then lock them up, only to reveal that he held the key. Over the years, neighbors noticed strange things. A foul odor sometimes drifted from Gacy's house, which he dismissed as a plumbing issue. Despite odd comings and goings, few could believe that the smiling contractor and party clown was hiding one of the most horrifying secrets in American crime. Behind closed doors, Gacy's suburban home became a trap. Many victims were assaulted and murdered in the very same rooms where Gacy had once entertained guests. He buried most of the bodies in the crawl space beneath his house, covering them with quicklime and dirt. In total, 33 young men and boys would be linked to Gacy's killing spree, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. The contrast between his public persona and private life was staggering. To the community, he was a neighbor, a businessman, even a role model. But to his victims, he was a predator hiding in plain sight. His double life worked so effectively that, for years, he escaped suspicion. But all it would take was the disappearance of a single teenager for the mask to finally slip, and for investigators to uncover the horrors lying just beneath the floorboards. By the late 1970s, John Wayne Gacy's world of secrets was beginning to unravel. On December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Piest disappeared after leaving his job at a pharmacy in Des Plaines, Illinois. Before vanishing, Piest had mentioned to a coworker that he was going to speak with a contractor about a job opportunity. That contractor was John Wayne Gacy. When Piest failed to return home, his family immediately reported him missing. Police soon learned of Gacy's criminal record in Iowa, and suspicion began to grow. Detectives began surveillance, watching Gacy's movements closely. At first, he acted confident, certain that his respectable community image would protect him. He even invited officers into his home, offering them coffee and casual conversation. But investigators noticed unsettling details: the strange odor lingering inside the house, inconsistent stories from Gacy himself, and the odd behavior of a man who seemed far too calm given the circumstances. As days passed, the investigation intensified. Police searched his home and found items that raised alarms: a class ring, driver's licenses that didn't belong to Gacy, and handcuffs. Surveillance also revealed Gacy's erratic behavior: drinking heavily, speaking openly about his life, and at times seeming close to confessing. Investigators later recalled how Gacy appeared to be crumbling under the weight of his own secrets. Finally, on December 21, 1978, police obtained a second search warrant. What they uncovered inside Gacy's home shocked the world. Entering the crawl space beneath his house, officers discovered human remains. The nightmare hidden beneath the suburban foundation was now in plain view. Gacy was arrested that same night. Over the following weeks, investigators recovered body after body from the crawl space and other locations connected to him. In total, 29 victims were found buried on his property. 4 others were discovered in nearby rivers, where Gacy admitted he had disposed of them when the crawl space became too crowded. The gruesome discoveries confirmed that Gacy was not just a predator, he was one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. What stunned the public even more was how long he had maintained his double life without detection. Here was a man who had shaken hands with politicians, entertained children as a clown, and built a successful business, all while committing unspeakable crimes in his own home. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy sent shockwaves through the nation. His case became one of the most heavily covered crime stories of the 20th century, and the horrifying details of what lay beneath his house forever changed the way Americans viewed the safety of their own neighborhoods. But the story was far from over. Ahead lay a trial that would expose every detail of his crimes and ultimately lead to his fate. The trial of John Wayne Gacy began on February 6, 1980, in Cook County, Illinois, and quickly drew national attention. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: physical items taken from Gacy's home, testimony from investigators, and the chilling discovery of 29 bodies beneath his house. Survivors who had managed to escape Gacy's attacks also testified, describing his methods of luring and trapping them. Gacy's defense team argued insanity, claiming he suffered from multiple personality disorder. They suggested that the killer within him was separate from the man the community knew as a businessman and clown. But prosecutors countered with a clear narrative: Gacy was not insane, but calculating and deliberate. He had carefully planned his crimes, concealed evidence, and maintained a facade that allowed him to operate for years undetected. The jury deliberated for just over 2 hours before returning a verdict. On March 13, 1980, John Wayne Gacy was found guilty of 33 counts of murder, along with sexual assault and other charges. He was sentenced to death, a punishment that reflected both the scale of his crimes and the horror they inspired. In prison, Gacy maintained a strange existence. He spent years appealing his conviction, but also took up painting, creating dozens of artworks, many depicting clowns. These paintings later became infamous, some being sold at auctions, others destroyed in symbolic acts by victims' families. Even behind bars, Gacy seemed to embrace his notoriety, often granting interviews where he shifted blame, denied responsibility, or described himself as a misunderstood man. The long appeals process came to an end in the early 1990s. On May 10, 1994, at the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. Witnesses reported that his final words were defiant, "Kiss my ass." His death marked the end of a chilling chapter in American crime history, but it did little to erase the terror he left behind. The legacy of John Wayne Gacy is one of warning and unease. His case revealed how someone could hide monstrous crimes behind a mask of normalcy, even respectability. It forced communities to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil can exist in the most ordinary of places, behind the smile of a neighbor, the handshake of a businessman, or even the painted face of a clown entertaining children. Today, Gacy remains a haunting figure in true crime, a symbol of deception and brutality. His story continues to fascinate criminologists, historians, and the public alike, not because of sensationalism, but because it raises disturbing questions. How many others like him have existed, hidden in plain sight? And how can we ever truly know the darkness that lies within those we think we can trust?